how to prep for going into your first year or year 12 of economics. Welcome back guys, I am Umar, an A-level economics tutor, and a couple of weeks ago today actually was A-level results day for 2025, and this year my students achieved 17 A stars in A-level economics, which of course is quite spectacular and great. But the year before that, the students achieved 14 A stars in A-level economics, and then if we go a couple of years before that, I myself achieved an A star in A-level economics and one of the highest marks in the country. So I would say I'm fairly qualified to give you some advice and speak on the topic of how to prepare, and specifically how I prepare my students going into year 12 of economics. As first and foremost, you will be taking 3, 4, maybe even 5 A-level subjects. So in this video, I'm really going to focus on what I tell my students. Simple steps, simple actionable steps that you can remember and focus on throughout year 12 to help boost that grade of yours and hopefully get you the A's and the A stars. First things first, and if you take one thing from this video, it should be content mastery. So you need to master the content. I get absolutely bombarded over the summer with questions from parents, from students asking about choosing economics. And the main thing these questions usually focus on are essays. For example, I get lots of questions like, I didn't score very well in English, will I be able to do A-level economics? I didn't really like English, will I be able to do A-level economics essays? But this is the exact problem in year 12. Individuals are way too focused on the essays themselves rather than the precursor to the essays. To score well on essays, you need to have mastered your content. There is no A-star essay out there where the individual does not have A-star content knowledge. As without the content knowledge, you will be nowhere near writing the A-star chains of analysis, as that is how you write the A-star essays. You need the A-star content knowledge, which translates into the A-star chains of analysis, the A-star evaluation, which therefore makes overall an A-star essay. So like I said, you need a great depth of understanding to build these things we call step-by-step chain of analysis, accurate evaluation, to score those top marks on your essays. And the best way to get this content mastery isn't a specific YouTuber, isn't a specific website, it is specifically from your exam board themselves. It is your specification. Now, I'm sure you've used them in GCSEs, but especially for A-level economics, you will need to, and if you stick closely to specification, you will be scoring very well. Why is this? In class, trust me, I've gone through hundreds of students. You will be taught lots of different concepts in class, and lots of these will actually, in fact, not be relevant to your specific exam board. Therefore, if these concepts are not on your specification, you will not be assessed on these concepts. So you want to make sure you're focusing just on the detail that is on your specification and on your exam board, and you do that by using the specification, and the way you revise, the way you tailor your revision is to those spec points. These spec points tell you everything you need to know, and even better, it tells you everything you don't need to know. So if something is not included in the spec point, you're safe to assume, you can do a bit of research, but you're safe to assume that you will not be assessed on this. So to put it in simple terms, you cut out the waffle and you focus on the priority points. As like I said, your 3, 4, 5 A levels you're dealing with, and A-level economics itself has loads of content itself, so you do not want to be learning things which are not relevant, which you will not be assessed on. So focus on the things you're assessed on, get really good at those specification points, become very knowledgeable on the things you will be assessed on, as that will help you gain those A and A star grades. My next big tip is all to do with diagrams. Now, especially if you have not done economics at GCSE, which I suspect many of you have not, you probably have never seen a diagram before, except if you did something like GCSE business. Now, this is what a diagram looks like. It has a supply curve here, we have a demand curve here, and you should learn this diagram. You should know this diagram to a very deep extent before Christmas. So before you finish your Christmas, you should have completed this diagram. So you have price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis. This gives us the equilibrium price of PO and the quantity of QO. But that's just an example of what a diagram looks like. But like I said, diagrams is a totally new concept for many of you, and that will mean many of you will make massive mistakes. And the biggest mistake is learning it like content, learning it in a parrot fashion manner. So many students will look at this diagram, just learn how to draw the supply curve, learn how to draw the demand curve, learn what is on the axes, and then that is all they will learn. But that is the completely wrong way to go about learning diagrams. As later on in the year, when you focus more on essay practice, doing those 20 mark questions, those 25 mark questions, one of the main problems students come to me with and parents come to me with is that the student is not able to develop their chain of analysis. They just don't have anything to write. They cannot write in any more detail, and one of the main causes of this problem is not learning diagrams correctly, and specifically not learning diagrams in enough detail. In my experience, the lower level students, the C and D grade students, are still able to recall diagrams. But the thing that differentiates C and D grade students from those A and A star students is that A and A star students can, of course, accurately recall the diagram, but they also have a depth of understanding behind the diagram. They understand what the supply curve means. They understand what the demand curve actually means. It's not just about being able to recall that demand is downward sloping. So as you can see, the demand curve is a straight line that slopes downwards, and that is the level that 90% of students remain at. That's all they learn, and that's all they will ever learn. Thus why most students will end up, statistically, will end up with the lower end grades, whereas the top level students, the top of the bunch. This is why such low number of students, such low percentage of students get the A's and the A stars. They learn at a deeper level. So what is that deeper level? Firstly, understanding the inverse relationship that demand has. So that inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, and how that affects demand. And then other things like the factors that shift demand. And there's great acronyms to learn things like that. And then even more, different goods and services we say have different elasticities, therefore it affects how the demand curve looks. So this causes demand curve sometimes to look more shallow, to look more steep, and this is the level, this is the depth you need to be able to manipulate and understand this diagram to achieve the A's and the A stars. To summarize, it's not just about being able to recall the diagrams, it is then also having a deeper level of understanding about these diagrams, thus allowing you to be confident to incorporate them into your chains of analysis, into your essays, to allow you to score those top marks. Now moving on to the last tip, of course, has to be exam technique. Now this is pretty much the thing me as a tutor and this whole channel is known for, just exam technique. Essays and essay writing is a skill. Skills cannot be crammed for. They require, over a long period of time, focus work to improve. I have a full playlist dedicated to exam technique, which has a lot more detail than I can give you in this one simple tip. But to give you that one simple tip, it is start early. Like I said, it is a skill. It takes time to improve. So the longer you give yourself, the better you will get and the bigger advantage you have. But like I always say, economics is a double-edged sword. You have content mastery on one side, then you have exam technique on the other side. And the precursor to building that exam technique has to be, you have to have a level of content mastery and a really good depth of content knowledge. So before working on your exam technique, focus and put the time in to master the content, as it will mean those gains in exam technique, those leaps in exam technique will be much more significant. But that is a summary for this video. I do still have a few one-on-one slots left. Click the link in the description to find out more for that. If you do have any general comments on this question, any questions, do leave it down below in the comments. I will get back to you, and best of luck with year 12.